Hello everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So, just get the videos, there's more videos, stuff that I did. One of those 3 videos that I'm including, like I do every week, is actually a power leveling video. So I'm considering uploading the broadcast that came directly before this live recording of Mondays with Mrhappy, because I basically did levels 4 to 34 on Archer in about 3 hours and 40 minutes. If I had done 1 to 4, it would have been 3 hours, 40 minutes, and like 20 seconds. Level 1 to 4 does not take any time at all with the power leveling method. So check out that video. It's doing pretty well, and I've now tested it. If you have one person helping you, you could do 1 to 34 in no time at all. And then what you do is you say to that friend, to be like, hey man, you do this for me, and then tomorrow I'll do this for you. And then everything will be dandy, dandy, dandy. So I'm doing another live recording. So at the end of the questions that we have from the Dream Network forums, which if you want to ask a question for Mondays with Mrhappy, that's the best way to do it. Go under the video, go to the Dream Network forums and ask the question there. That's the best way to get one answered. After we're done with those, I take a few questions from the live Twitch chat. But last few videos have been pretty long. So what do you say we get right into it, shall we? All right, first question. Hey, Happy, there is another question roulette ahead, so choose wisely. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 roulettes. Let's go straight down the middle with this one. Would be ranking or top list of what would be the ranking or top list of the most toxic data centers of 14? Or you're saying would ranking it based on toxicity be controversial? I mean, toxicity in general is controversial because what some people view as toxicity, the term toxic has been so like hyperbolized in the MMO like landscape, especially in Final Fantasy XIV, where it's come down to someone who's offering helpful advice in a friendly way can be considered a toxic player. So it really depends on, you know, are we talking about legit like people who just, when somebody fucks up, they go, dude, what is this? You're the fucking worst, uninstall. This is like, I don't know why you bother paying for this game, you scrubs should get. Those people are toxic, in which case Ether is probably the winner because we have Gilgamesh. we're super douchebags. There we go. So definitely gonna put Ether at the top of that list. Like I said, it's not really super controversial, but what people consider toxic is more controversial than saying one data center is more toxic than another. All right, next question. Hello again, Mrhappy. Thank you for your help with my hotbar situation. After the stream, I fixed my issues. Today, I have only one question as my brain is fried due to all the blue quest markers around me. Since there are so many blue quest markers, I haven't been doing main story quests to get Heavensward content. Should I ignore them and do the main story or unlock all I can? You should be doing a mix of both. It's smart that you're actually paying attention to those blue quest markers because there's a ton of features locked behind them. There's Beast Tribe quests. There's little tiny things like the Esthetician and unlocking features like within the gold, unlocking the Gold Saucer, or unlocking Hildebrand, or any of those things. So it's good that you're doing them, but don't ignore the main story. You definitely want to be doing the main story as well. So I'd say go back and forth between the two of them until you catch up with the main story, because there is an end to both of these lines that you're trying to follow, and the main story one has a much more predictable ending. I don't know how many of these blue quest markers you finished so far. Just pick up everything. Do it all. Everything. Alright, next question. Hello, Mister. Important question. How should I work Flare into a Black Mage rotation? I feel like it's not very useful anymore. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a very good Black Mage. It's just a job I use sometimes so I don't become bored with the same jobs. See, I do that too. I just play jobs that I don't usually play in like roulettes, just for the sake of doing it. It makes doing the roulette a little bit more exciting. Flare is really just an AoE thing. Now, I am actually live streaming on Twitch, so I'm sure that someone who actually plays Black Mage can answer me while I'm reading this question. But pretty much it's something you'll do towards the end of your MP cycle when you're AoEing. You won't force it into your single target rotation. From what I see, the only time I've seen people like swift cast a Flare is like when a boss is at like 0.2% HP and they just want to get the Flare out of the way and just dump their MP pool just to finish it off. But pretty much you'll do, from what I remember, the old rotation was Fire 3, this is excluding like Raging Strikes. The old rotation was basically Fire 3, Fire 2, Fire 2, Fire 2, Flare, Convert, Fire 2, Blizzard 3, and then they would continue on. Sometimes they would do Flare, Transpose, Flare, not Flare, Transpose, Flare. Flare, Convert, Flare, Transpose, and then they would like Blizzard 3 once, or Freeze. Freeze is what I see them use now. And then they go back to the Fire 3 and then Fire 2, Fire 2, Fire 2. So It's pretty much, oh, single target flare is also in the opener, and single target flare is just in the opener. I'm reading that in my chat right now. See, I don't play Black Mage at level 60, so flare is always something that I never keep up to date on what the latest trends are with flare. So apparently you can end your opener with a flare as well, although as someone who doesn't play Black Mage, you should probably just be Googling like a Black Mage guide. There's definitely some resources out there that will give you a better answer and a better explanation than somebody who only played Black Mage at level 50 pretty much. Alright, next one. Hey Mr. Happy, as a repeat questioner, have a bonus of all the Nidhogg weapons. I actually have most of the Nidhogg weapons I want. I have the Paladin Sword, I have the Astro Globe. I actually think I picked up the daggers, but I'm not using them because I have 240 weapons, so I picked up a fair majority of them. I just want the mount at this point. That is mine. Anyway, I come to you with a super awesome opinion about job abilities. They say I'm kidding, guys. Don't worry. That's now the new joke for Mondays with Mr. Happy. Say, I have an idea I want you to know. And then I say, no. So anyway, I'm kidding. Couldn't help myself with all the opinions you get. Had to troll you a bit. Now for a real question. A slight Dark Knight spoiler. Alright, it's friggin' Dark Knight job quest. I'm not going to do the whole thing again. Can we please get dialogue boxes for story quests and whatnot? Oh, that's not even a spoiler of a question. When you mean dialogue boxes, do you mean like sort of talk? I'd like to see my character talk as opposed to being a Legend of Zelda. See, that's the thing. We were actually having a pretty in-depth conversation about MMO characters being voiced and how it kind of strips the ability to be kind of exactly who you want to be as soon as you make them voiced or as soon as you allow them to type in responses. Because even if you were allowed to like do a dialogue box, you were allowed to pick certain dialogues, your character is ultimately a hero. There's no evil and good side of Final Fantasy XIV. There's no I'm the evil warrior of light. You are a good person in doubt. You're a good person without a doubt. So even the choices you have are just a matter of like tough love versus understanding or sympathetic. That is the extent of what your choices will ever be. So being able to choose or being able to hear your own character's voice, I guess you could say that technically because it's already so narrow, adding the voice is not a bad thing. I personally, like, I could never imagine Hildebrand voice, I could never imagine Godbert voice, and I could never imagine my own character voice. I wasn't a huge fan of it in the Star Wars games. I'm not a huge fan of voicing a main character in an MMO. Even in Fallout 4, I wasn't a huge fan of having a voice-acted main character because it's just so weird when you go from like one extreme, like somebody asks you a question, it's like, oh my god, tell me, what happened so I can help you? And then they explain to you and your very next response is, well, fuck that shit sucks. Like, you just became two completely different people, and it makes sense more when you can't hear the voice, when it's just like, whatever, I can pick whatever context I want. But as soon as you put an emotion to it, it's like, wow, you are literally the most bipolar RPG character in existence. So I'm okay with having choices in quests, but they're never going to be super crazy, like sort of expanded upon, if that makes sense. All right, next question. Sup, Mr. Happy? First time bonus. One dancer of choice. How about none? I have two questions for you. I'm still fairly new to 14. What is lore and savage gear? So tombstones of lore are what we're referring to when we refer to lore gear. Every even numbered patch, meaning 3.0, 3.2, 3.4, 4.0, 4.2, every even numbered patch adds a new type of currency known as a tombstone. And they give them fancy names. We've had tombstones of philosophy, mythology. Right now we have at level 50 tombstones of poetics. We had tombstones of law at the start of the expansion. We have tombstones of esoterics now, as well as tombstones of lore. The most recent Tombstone Incorporated always has like a weekly limitation on how many you can obtain, and is used to get generally the highest item level gear alongside of Savage gear. Savage is just a difficulty denotation for raids. It's the harder difficulty of the raid encounters, and that's where, along with lore gear, some of the best gear is gotten. Lore gear is inherently a lower item level than Savage, but you can get items that upgrade them to the same power affinity as Savage gear. So that's what that means. 2, I main Dark Knight and I've gotten fairly good, but was wondering if you could give me a few tips. Also, very new to MMO, so I don't understand most MMO terms. Sorry if I'm a bother. So they're upfront, they're admitting. And first of all, I want to say, as a new MMO player, it's important that you're very upfront. A lot of people will pick up an MMO, and especially Final Fantasy XIV, and instead of stating that they are not aware of the terminology, they kind of try to stay out of the conversation and not learn it. And one of the most important things going into an MMO is the decision to learn and the decision to be upfront about your experiences, because it makes people more understanding and it makes them more willing to answer the question. So I do have to say thank you for saying that, because the question doesn't look bad when you give it that kind of context. But if somebody says they've been playing for 2 years, they have no idea what these things mean, then it starts to get confusing because you wonder how they went all that time without that level of context. So, a few tips on Dark Knight. One of the things is try to keep Dark Side on pretty much at all times. There's situations where it may fall off because you ran out of MP. That takes a little bit of practice. And also Grit. Grit is something that you'll learn how to use properly as you go. But when you're the one tanking, Grit, most of the time you'll leave it on until you become very much more experienced, in which case we'll have a completely different conversation. But if you're in a group and there's no need for 2 tanks, a good example would usually be as you're doing the A Realm Reborn main story, but as you're a Dark Knight already, it kind of doesn't matter so much. But say like you're doing Ravana, or you're doing, I don't know what's a good example. It's a lot harder to find examples. Thoradin in the Duty Finder is an example of something that can be completely done with 1 tank, even though you have 2. Don't leave Grit on if you're not the one tanking the boss. If you need a monster to be hitting you, it's fine to have Grit on. Bismarck is a good example, and Ravana, for the most part, you will be outside of Grit. But if you ever need to be tanking a mob, try to have Grit on. If you're not, be using Blood Weapon. And also be sure to be using your combos efficiently. Like, use Power Slash with your Dark Arts to get a lot of enmity. Use Dark Arts with your Soul Eater in order to hit more damage. You know, don't just be sitting there without not using your Dark Arts. Don't just be sitting there not using your off-global cooldown. Make sure when you're being attacked, if you see a big attack coming, or you know a big attack is coming, to be using defensive cooldowns. Those are all pretty standard things. So definitely try to be using your abilities or looking for opportunities where your abilities make sense to use. And don't be forgetting about off-global cooldowns, using them for damage, using them for utility. It's very important, especially as a tank. All right, let's see the next question. What is the signal, I'm sure he meant to say single, biggest hit you have ever seen one person do? Anywhere, dummy, boss, ads, aka just the biggest number. It's definitely a Black Mage. I swear I've seen like a 22k Fire 4 on like Ravana or something. Ravana in his vulnerability form with Foe's Requiem, Trick Attack, Raging Strikes, Int Pot. I feel like I'm missing something here. The Magic Down Hypercharge, because I think you can stack the AoE Magic Down Hypercharge plus Foe Requiem plus Trick Attack plus Battle Litany, because it's a crit. You just need to make sure that you land the crit. I'm trying to think of any other buffs that could be present on the boss that would buff that up. I think so. You think on like Ravana, it's just insane, because he has that vulnerability, you just do insane amounts of damage on that guy. Because I've seen like 14k Fire 4s on like A8 Savage, so it's like, just imagine what it's like on Ravana when he goes into vulnerability mode. Wildfire, I don't really know. I've seen huge wildfires, but I've never really kept track of wildfires. You know what I mean? Like what the biggest wildfire I've seen is. I know that like hitting for like an 11, 12k wildfire is pretty, like that's what you want to aim for. You want to hope you get plenty of crits. But man, it's definitely a Black Mage Fire 4. Somewhere down the lines, it's definitely been a Black Mage Fire 4 that's been the hardest hitting thing I've seen. All right, next question. Hey, Happy, how you doing? How you doing? I have a few questions this week, so I have an Adventure in Need bonus of 20 Umbrite. You, my sir, are a god. Just saying. And a plate of hot wings. I had one of those the other day. Anyway, after going through the Remembrance side quest, it made me think that the more we are remembered for our great feats, more faith belief we have in Strength of the Warrior of Light. My question is, do you think we will fight a summoned Warrior of Light? I guess it depends on... Because we already have a physical manifestation of the Warrior of Light. We are the physical manifestation of that. That's what we are. And that's been something that Heidelin has done over the course of the years, just giving people the Echo, giving people Crystals of Light. Warrior of Light is just kind of like a big deal because we are that go-to savior for this day and age. So I don't think we'll ever see a summoned one because usually the being is passed and it's being summoned in remembrance. I guess the question is, could we summon like a Warrior of Light from a previous era? It's possible. I don't see it likely though, because people just already know who the Warrior of Light is. They're not praying for one. They already have one and they're just praying that he shows up or that he's there or that they'll get his help of some kind. 2, whatever happened to being able to log out in our free company private houses? You mean like so you don't get ejected? I don't know. I think they just kept it that way because there wasn't really a major amount of complaint and they could put effort into other things. So I think that it just ejects. It's a minor inconvenience at worst. The only thing is if you have a bed in your free company house, that's kind of annoying because you don't get that little in-room cutscene where you get out of bed. But even that's still just a minor inconvenience. And 3, what do you think we will ever get a choreographed fight for our characters instead of just holding our weapons menacingly and enemies and cutscenes. I would like to see us fight something along the lines of like Raban versus Ilberd in 2.55. It'd be cool, but I also enjoy seeing the other characters that aren't the Warrior of Light being useful, because even the characters themselves like to joke around about how the Warrior of Light basically did everything for us. And then you finally see them be useful in a cutscene, and you're like, yeah, they're being useful, and it's cool to see them do something for once. So, I don't know, I get kind of excited either way. I don't need our character to do anything special. I would like to see us get a little more involved, though. Not to the point where we have a super choreographed fight like Thancred versus the Warrior of Darkness or Raban versus Ilberd. And next one, hey Happy, how you doing? See, how you doing? See, he knows that you don't even put the H. It's not how you doing, it's how you doing. There you go. He knows exactly how Sly likes to say it. So, somewhat long-time watcher, first-time asker. Okay. Oh, you were in my chat today. I see who this is. I do have a question, but I just wanted to point out an example of random mechanics that aren't cool. In Final Fantasy 13, the final boss had an instant kill mechanic that hit a random party member, and if it hit lightning, you basically lost. Why don't I remember this? I never had an issue with being one shot by the final boss. Am I remembering that? Didn't he pick one party member at a time, but he always picked lightning last? I don't recall ever running into an issue where the last boss would pick lightning and it would just insta game over. I think I know what mechanic you're talking about. I always thought that it was just lightning was always last. I don't think I ever ran into this issue where lightning would be the first person to be selected by that. It took me an embarrassing long time to figure out how to ask a question. So here it goes. Do you think something should be done to alleviate the workload of unlocking roulettes? This is a fair question, I feel. I said workload because I couldn't think of how else to phrase it, but I remember when I was unlocking all the roulettes when I got to 50 before Heaven's Ward released. It's been a little bit reduced since then. You used to not be able to do trial roulette unless you did all the trials. You need to do Hildebrand, you need to do main story, you needed to do side quests, you need to do the relic quest. Like, if you didn't do all those things, you didn't get the trial roulette, which was annoying, which is why I'm glad you don't need to do all those things to unlock the trial roulette anymore. So that workload was a little bit alleviated. It seemed like a lot of, I can't think of how it would be done because I understand you kind of need to complete the dungeons to be able to roulette them, but it seems like an ever-growing issue. So the most annoying thing kind of is having to re-unlock the expert roulette every patch because they want to just stick only the two new dungeons in it. It would be nice, like I said, if the expert roulette just had 4 dungeons, the 2 dungeons from the prior patch and the 2 dungeons from the new patch, and then it's just you still have the expert roulette, but you have the 2 old dungeons in it still, and when you unlock the 2 newer dungeons, they're just added to it. I would like to see that because it is kind of annoying to just be forced to do that if you want to do your expert roulette, to have to go that extra step. And then on top of that, if you didn't unlock the expert roulette before, you now need to go unlock the 2 latest, you need to go unlock those 2 dungeons anyway, because now your high level roulette is locked and your expert roulette is locked. So either way, you're basically just creating this new locking system every patch to encourage people to unlock all the dungeons. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's okay as long as there's more than 2 choices in the roulette, but they'll do what they'll do. I think that that would definitely help alleviate some of this, as you call it, workload for unlocking the roulette. All right, next question. Hi, Mr. Happy. I'm a recent watcher, and this is my first time posting. Alrighty then. I've been playing on and off since the beta, and your Let's Play series has helped me a lot, so thank you for making it. So my question is, do you think that Bard Machinists will get offhand gear in the form of ammo? This has actually been asked quite a few times, that because Bards and Machinists, their base weapon damages are lower than the other jobs, and that's supposed to be because their ranged DPS, it's easier for them to maintain their damage. And it was a little bit more fair before Heaven's Ward came out in the case of Bard, but people have been asking, maybe at one point they'll give them ammo to make up for the main stats, not the main stats, the weapon damage that they're missing, and that the different ammo could have different effects, it could do all this cool stuff. And some people have even just suggested giving them ammo that changes the way that their shots look. Maybe if you equip a different type of Gauss barrel in the ammo slot, for example, your Gauss barrel doesn't have to look the way it is. Your ammo slot could just be used to equip a different Gauss barrel, or your ammo slot as a bard could change the way that certain arrows look. Maybe turn flaming arrow into blue fire instead of red fire, which has been another idea that I think I would support. I don't think we'll ever see ammo used just for the sake of adding it to another piece of armor, because it's really annoying that tanks already have that issue with the sword and the shield, and they basically, if they could win one and lose the other, essentially in a loot roll, if they're not just buying them through lore tomestones and whatnot. But I don't think you'll ever see ammo incorporated to change the element of an arrow. I don't think you'll ever see it just to add stats to them. Maybe at some point, if they do more interesting things with stats, ammo could have additional effects. But even then, I think that the most likely use for ammo at this point would be some sort of glamour slot to change things, such as the look of the arrows that a bard shoots, the look of their certain skills, and the same with machinists, including the look of their Gauss barrel. All right, next one. Hey there, Haps. Wanted to ask these questions really bad a week ago, but didn't submit my questions in time. Sad face. Well, you're here now, aren't you? One, wouldn't you agree it would be a great idea? You know how I feel about idea questions. We'll see. We'll see if it would be a great idea 4.0 they redesigned or just added a lot of area to the 3 original city states. I mean, Ishgard clearly looks a ton better or bigger, and it's more detailed because they wanted to show off an expansion. This place had been built up by the story. So you're asking if they could go back and enhance the old cities. Unless there's a reason to, I don't want to. That's resources taken out of adding new areas. Because I don't care if they make Ul'dah bigger. That's not going to make me go back to Ul'dah more often. It's a slightly grander experience for people who go through the leveling process and the people who occasionally hang out there. But it's not a place I'd want to put resources when a new expansion is coming out, especially without some sort of reason. Like, why is Ul'dah expanding? Why is more of it opening up? Functionally, why? That's always a big question. And on top of that, I'd rather they just work on making the new expansion areas sort of grand and more detailed than going back and revamping the old stuff. That's kind of why they don't do flying in the old zones, because they don't want to have to redesign the maps to allow for vertical travel. Question 2 is a bit lengthy and contains Weeping City spoilers. All right, let's see about this. What are your thoughts on the Weeping City story? I felt it was very underwhelming. I'm a big fan of the Weeping City story. I feel like it's a good attempt at an original story. I would like to see them spend more time fleshing it out, because it basically feels like it feels like a side quest. It doesn't feel like there's this utmost importance that we stop Diablos from whatever he's doing. You know what I mean? It's got good characters. It's got interesting characters. They're dynamics. They're not your classic heroes. They're sky pirates. They're rival sky pirates, sort of being drafted into this role of a hero. And I like it. It's definitely a good attempt at an original storyline. I like the way that they teased the Void Arc back in 3.0 when they had it flying around. I love things like that, and I would love to see them continue those kind of teasers going forward into new content, into new raids. Like, I would love it if, for example, even if I couldn't do anything with it, like, let's say Phanolin has the Doom Train going through it, and you can occasionally spot kind of like the ghost of the Doom Train, and that's it. But it's like super rare that you ever see him. You can't fight him, can't do anything. That would be cool. It's teasing that there's something coming up. That just adds the sort of living anticipation and anxiety, like, ooh, something is happening here, but we don't know what yet. So now I get to look forward to it. So I think that it's actually a pretty well put together story. There's just not enough of it. I think that's ultimately been the lesson we've learned, is that they've done a lot of new stories, but they're not fleshing them out too much. They're really just making too many different ones, which is why I said I wasn't really too happy with Hildebrand and Heaven's Ward, because it just feels like they went, throw in 15 minutes, make them happy because they asked for it, and then it's done. Whereas Weeping City, I feel like they are doing a good amount. They just could be doing slightly more. All right, next question. Hello, Happy. I have a question for Mondays with Mr. Happy. I hope so, because if you're here and you were looking for Skittles, you would be sadly disappointed. You are known as an avid 14 player and have several alternate characters other than your main. You must have completed the main story quest line several times. Do you enjoy completing the main story quest lines? No. What I do enjoy is seeing how fast I can get through them. That is the only thing. I like to, when I go through a leveling process once, I like to say, okay, where can I do things faster? And how can I get through them with no delays? I actually am excited doing that. I'm someone who loves watching things like SGDQ, AGDQ. I love watching the occasional speedrunner on Twitch on speedrunslive.com. I love trying to map things out and improve the speed in which they're completed. That's why I was talking about that power leveling video earlier. 1 to 34 was not an under 4-hour job for me prior to today. Today it was done in under 4 hours. Yes, it took the help of somebody else, but that was the entire point of showing power leveling, was that somebody can power level you through those first 34 levels to make that process a whole lot quicker, to make it a whole lot more less time consuming. So no, I don't enjoy doing the main storylines over and over again. What I do enjoy is trying to see how can I get through these faster than I did last time. That is what I enjoy doing. So yeah, I'm completely with you. I would be totally for them kind of crunching the main story if it was possible, but that's a topic for another video, because I have a video about the jump potion topic on Reddit coming up very soon. All right, next question. Hiya, Mr. Happy. Hey. My group has been slamming our heads against A8 Savage for some time now, and instead of doing better and progressing, I personally feel like I'm doing worse than I was a month ago. A4 Savage did this to a lot of people, so just letting you know. Every night for this particular week, I've been botching basic mechanics in Phase 1 and screwing up height errors or single drills. You know what it is? It's because you've seen those things so many times, your brain just turns off when you're doing them. You basically need to look your brain in the face and be like, hey, do it. Somebody's gonna quote that and put it on a shirt, I swear. So anyway, yeah, that's what it is. Your brain is so conditioned to doing it, it's almost second nature, but it doesn't. But because you're not devoting attention to it while you're doing it, it's sort of pulling you away from doing it properly. If that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah. So, and also the funny thing is, you say you do better on the brute justice and the intermission phases. That's the funny thing. Every time there's a new raid tier out and like the world prog groups, we go into, we would go into fights, we would beat the first 2 fights in maybe a day, and we'd spend the next 6 days or longer progressing on the next fight. What would always happen is when we go back to re-clear the 2 very easy fights we got through in the first day, we would play way worse because we were just like, we don't care. We've only done these fights for like 2 hours, maybe 7 hours. This other fight we've put like 40 hours into at this point. So we know it, like, it's just ingrained in our head. And then you're like, what does this other fight even do anymore? I don't even know. And you just die. It's the same thing when you're practicing a later phase and you screw up the earlier phases. I'd say you pretty much just need to just not look at it as, okay, let's just get past this to practice on the new phase. Just the whole fight is your progression in your head at all times. So you don't ever screw up the earlier phases. That is the single most important thing that you need to do. Is just not get complacent because you're still working on the later phases and you've seen the earlier phases a million times. Hopefully that helps answer your question. And the next one, hello Haps, somewhat long time. I know exactly who you are. You actually came by the stream today. The person who's asking this question right at the beginning. Somewhat long time viewer, but first time asking. So yeah, what bonus can I give? I know. Do you fancy a Mughal shish kebab and slippers, specifically the slippers? I'm currently in a static that won't by any miracle reach or kill M4 Savage. It's sad, but to be honest, I don't mind that much. So my gear will be kind of limited to M1 Savage and probably M2 Savage and the lore upgraded gear. I went searching online for some gear builds and Shasta had updated his ninja guide and he gave some gear builds. With that in mind, I went to mix and match to get some similar gear with what is on my reach. Knowing that the best stats for ninja are crit and det, since the animal weapon allows for stat allocation, I did some simulations and here are the results. Alright, let's see. So yeah, my question dilemma is if it's worth it to go with the Anima with the 120 crit, 19 det, 101 skill speed, or go 120 crit, 115 det, 5 skill speed since I won't be able to get my hands on the M4 Savage. Well, looking at them side by side, what you should have actually posted here isn't... So, what you should have done is you should have gone to Areala, because now I guess I'm kind of relegated to doing this math right here, is... You pretty much, every single off-point stat has a value that it is given in relation to dexterity. So if I go to Areala's website, for example, I can very easily calculate this out. So we go to Ninja, we go to the BIS solver, and I'm not going to use the BIS solver, but I'm just going to use it as a means to determine the stat weights. So the animal weapon with 120 crit, 115 determination, and 5 skill speed, you can very easily math this out. So let's see. They're the same item level. So let's see. It's 0.215 times 120 crit. That's 25.8. And then you have 115 det. So we'll do plus parentheses. Yes, I'm enjoying this app. I don't want to rate... Windows 10 just asked me to rate how well the calculator app does. Seriously? You need my feedback on the calculator app. All right. Thank you, Windows 10. So then we have 115 times 0.168. And then we close that, we add them together. So it has 45, 12, and then plus 5 skill speed is pretty much plus parentheses 0.106 times 5. 45.65 effective dexterity value from off stats. So plus the main stat, you have dexterity on the weapon already. You have whatever. Like, you can just calculate out the difference in the effectiveness of the off stats. I can tell you right now, 101 skill speed and 19 determination is not going to net you more DPS than 120 crit, 115 det, and 5 skill speed. Just because 115 det is so much more superior to 101 skill speed. I mean, the difference between 1 point is 0.062. So, for example, we have there's 101 skill speed times 0.106. The hell? 101 skill speed times 0.106. So that 101 skill speed has a value of 10.7 dexterity. And 115 times 0.168 is a 19.32. I can tell you right now that is almost a 1 weapon damage difference between basically your 2 anima weapons here. It's like 3/4 of a weapon damage difference. So definitely go with the crit det skill speed. One thing I'd say about the skill speed though, I'd look through your builds a little bit more. If you put 5 accuracy on that weapon instead of 5 skill speed, is there another piece you could replace to get more damage because you're going way over the accuracy that you're aiming for? Considering you're only doing M1 Savage, M2 Savage, I doubt that. But still, it's something worth looking into, but definitely go with the 120, 115, and the 5. Alright, next question. I'm a mid-time watcher and first-time poster, so kind of new-time Twitcher of yours. Mugen Raccoon, if you're confused. Good, guys. Actually, your name on the forums is not even close to that. So thank you for the clarification. So here's a bonus. Steak plus 1,000 lore. Can I do that? Well, I did. I will accept it. I'm going to make steak later. Well, recently I've been updating my gear and currently sitting with an esoterics weapon at 210, head of 230, and chest is 240 with legs and boots at I-230. My ranks and stuff have been I-220 with 1 ring at 230. Pretty much newbie lore geared monk. I level 224. My question is simply, my DPS is around 1.2 to 1.5. I always feel like I'm messing up and doing weak damage. I have 3 rotations depending on the fight. And I'm within the correct DPS for monk, or am I far below? I'd have to run and test it real quick, but at I-210, I think you can do like 1.6k to a dummy. 1.2 to 1.5 is way too big of a range. I'll tell you that much. If we're talking about dummy DPS purely, that's way too big of a range. It should be way more consistent than that. But, so here, you go with the perfect balance rotation. So you say you go with the perfect balance rotation, but you don't say what your perfect balance rotation is. On regular enemies, you don't use perfect balance. You pretty much can start with boot shine or dragon kick. It doesn't matter because you just need to make sure you're landing the hit. Dragon kick's is only the same potency from the flanks. Realistically, boot shine is perfectly okay because you're guaranteeing that 150 potency. And also, you shouldn't be starting with true strike. You should be starting with what's it called? You should be starting, yeah, because you're basically doing the 3 opposite abilities from what you should be. Boot shine versus dragon kick, we already established, doesn't make a difference. Dragon kick, in fact, will probably give you lower potency because you're not going to hit it from the flank, most likely. And it doesn't matter too much for that anyway. So, and then on top of that, true strike, no, you should be using twin snakes. You want to get those damage buffs up immediately. You do not true strike on the initial one, you want twin snakes. And as for snap punch, you should be using demolish because you want to get that dot ticking while you're building up those grease lightning stacks. And it is a higher potency per GCD than your snap punch will be there. And on top of that, you want to try and get everything else. And on top of that, you should actually, what am I saying? You shouldn't even be starting with boot shine. You should be starting with demolish or snap punch. You should be using change form to start in Coral form. You always start in Coral form. Even on trash, you can always arrange to start in Coral form. So you definitely don't want to be starting with boot shine or dragon kick. It's always, even when you're doing perfect balance rotation, in case you're curious, demolish, perfect balance. That's your start. You start with demolish and then perfect balance. Snap punch, blood for blood, snap punch, internal release, dragon kick, potion of strength, whichever potion you're using, twin snakes, elixir field, snap punch, howling fist, touch of death, steel peak, boot shine, shoulder tackle, true strike, forbidden chakra, demolish. That is the monk opener. So write that down little by little and practice it, because that's what it sounds like you're not really playing to the way things should be being done on monk. Alright, next question. Hey, Hapster. First questions. With the new rush to get the animal weapon quest unlocked, what are the easiest ways of collecting crystal sands right now for those who've been late to the party? So if you have 100 leave quests to spare and you have no intention of leveling, crafting, or gathering with them anytime soon, what you do is you go to someplace, you go to any Heaven's Ward zone with any set of Heaven's Ward leaves, and you initiate the leave, you look very quickly for a treasure coffer around, you open it, get the amber encased vialkin, and then abandon the leave. Don't complete the leave, abandon it, and then retry it, reinitiate it, and just do that over and over again for all 100 leaves. If you're very unlucky, you might only get like 5 to 10 amber encased vialkins and 100 leaves. If you're really lucky, like me, you'll get like 27. And on top of that, you're doing the single-use leaves. Don't do temple leaves. Do the single-use leaves, so you can do 100 of them, as opposed to only 10 temple leaves. Hopefully that answers the question adequately. And second question, oh, and another thing is blue gather or blue crafter scripts. Really, really easy to get them. And even poetics. With 450 poetics, you get 5 superior enchanted inks and 5 Thenarian mists. 450 poetics, 1 sand. Also very, very, very easy. Second questions. Out of all the meals available, what are your 3 that sound the most disgusting? You know, I don't know many off the top of my head. Let me just, I already have Arial open. Let me look at some of the more recent foods. Like, I would eat urchin loaf. I would eat the bosciala. I would eat a Logan steak. I would eat a steamed staff. I would eat a moral salad. I would eat deep fried okeanos. I would eat cockatrice meatballs. I would eat baked papaya. I don't know, man. I like most of the foods that are described in Final Fantasy XIV, so I actually can't think of one that I probably wouldn't eat. So I don't think I have a good answer for this question. So I like food. Come on now. Like, is that really a surprise to you? All right, next question. Good day, Happy. How should I allocate the stats on my Dragoon Anima? Okay. Have you checked your crit report? Your crit det report. 120 crit, 115 det, 5 skill speed. Some people have argued that maybe you go with some skill speed build on the Dragoon weapon, and it's probably viable in some way. As long as you're hitting the minimum of like the 600 that people recommend for Blood of the Dragon, then you should be fine. But probably going to go crit det skill speed with a little, there's the 5 skill speed points there, Dan. So, and besides, if you do screw it up, you can reallocate the points, but I don't know how to yet because I haven't finished mine. I'm almost done with it, so I'll get back to you on that one. All right, next question. We have like 5 questions left on the forums, I think, something like that. So, hi, Haps. Hi. Now improved in quality for less confusion with the extra. Okay, so that's the face you were trying to make last week. Got it. 3 weeks and 3 questions, still the same 1 question and 1 for your opinion. For my third question, Shriek, have a bonus of a large grade 1 plot in the location of your choice. I'll use that for the Zalera for your company. The question this time involves Astrologian, and it's about draws in Diurnal Nocturnal Sect. I'm pretty accustomed to drawing and using all the cards the best I can, but I've noticed I'm pretty hesitant when it comes to the bowl, the balance, and the spear. There's always a situation where I'm hesitant on which party member to place the cards on and when to use it. What would be some factors to follow in the best order? So for the bowl, okay, so the bowl is almost always going to be somebody who's about to take a lot of damage. So if you know the mechanics of the fight and you know somebody's going to be taking more damage, and keep in mind, this is with a single target bowl. An AoE bowl is good if you're going to get hit by like a raid mechanic soon. Everyone's going to get hit by like a raid AoE. A single target bowl almost always goes to the tanks because they're taking consistent damage, so they make the most use of that damage reduction. If a raid member needs it because a mechanic is targeting a specific raid member, great example of this would be A7 Savage. When he shoots a laser beam at one of the targets, putting a bowl on that target is of great help. If you know a mechanic is going to hit a party member and they're going to be taking a crap ton of damage, the bowl is good on them. Balance, if you're not placing it on the whole party, and you're only placing it on one person, make sure you know a couple things. One, are any of these people going to be removed from dealing damage to the boss soon? For example, is the monk going to be doing the jails and A7 Savage? I'd probably use A7 Savage for the most part because it's a really good example. Is the monk going to be doing jails, and I have to place the balance on them, and then they basically go like 8 seconds with dealing no DPS, and then they get dropped in the jail. That's 8 seconds of a wasted balance. Other than that, if everyone just has 100% uptime, who's doing the most? Literally, just look down the list. Who is doing the most damage here? Give them the balance. Some people go, no, give it to the person who's doing the least so they can catch up to the people who are doing the most. That's not how percentages works. That's not how percentages work. If somebody's doing 2,000 and somebody's doing 1,500, do you want to give the 20% to the 2,000 so he gets an extra 300? I'm sorry, an extra 300, an extra 400 DPS, or do you want to give the 20% to the 1,500 so he gets an extra like 220, whatever? He gets an extra fucking, what's 10%? It's fucking 300. He's getting an extra 300. I mixed them up. That's why I got confusing. Or do you want to give it to the dude who's getting an extra 300 so he can do 1,800? Like, come on now, come on, just percentages. That's just how percentages work. As for the spear sucks. The spear is only good if you know you're lining it up with people's cooldowns. The most common use for the spear, use it on yourself when Luminous Ether is coming back up, so you can get your Luminous Ethers back more quickly, and it acts as an MP catalyst for yourself. If you have a summoner in your group who you know is about to do like their whole Dreadworm rotation, it's really good on them, because it'll basically get their entire Dreadworm burst back up immediately. But that goes for anyone. Like, it's only really good if you're sure it's going to apply to a lot of abilities when you use it on somebody. So yourself is almost always the safest bet when it comes to the spear. And then for sects, I find Nocturnal to be sort of a niche skill. Yeah, Nocturnal is pretty much, you only go Nocturnal if your co-healer is a white mage in Savage raids. Like when I do Nidhogg Extreme as Astro, I almost always do it with a Scholar co-healer. But if I were to do it with a white mage, I would go Nocturnal. I don't like going Nocturnal, but I would go Nocturnal just to have one healer that's providing a shield. If you're going with a Scholar, you can't use it because Eloquium matters more. That's the bottom line. So you would pretty much go Diurnal in that case. But in almost every situation, in Trial Roulette, in dungeons, it's pretty much Diurnal for bosses. Sometimes I switch to Nocturnal between pulls. Like if we're on the way from one pull to the next, I'll throw a Nocturnal shield on the tank, and then I'll switch back to Diurnal. But even that sometimes has risks, because sometimes the tank pulls before you're like able to switch back, and then you get kind of locked in it. So it is, yeah, Diurnal is really a lot better. And for your opinion, I've seen you use controller, and what are your thoughts on using a controller? I don't think there's really many disadvantages versus advantages. I think the biggest thing I have with the controller, the biggest thing I don't like is probably pet control for Scholar and Summoner. It's totally doable, don't get me wrong, but I don't like that, and I don't like placed skills unless you're using the macro to place the skills wherever it is that you're just looking immediately. And it's just so annoying to have to hold down the button, press the button you want to use, let go of the trigger, and then place it. It's just like there's a lot of dexterity there when I could just like on my keyboard press F and left click real quick, or just press F with the macro and be good to go. So those are the only things I really find to be disadvantages, but if you're good at controller, you're good at controller. It doesn't matter. All right, next question. Hey, Happy, third time poster here. Here's some high quality hot wings. I like hot wings. One, I was listening to the last State of the Realm and you were talking about how it would be impossible to get a solid 24 raid team. I kind of see why sometimes it's hard enough to get a good 8-man and their schedule and things like that, but I remember from old times in WoW I played Wrath of the Lich King. It wasn't that hard to raid weekly as a 25-man. Man, do you remember what I remember about raiding weekly as a 25-man with Wrath of the Lich King? Putricide. Putricide. Hell, even the fourth boss, the dude who, like, if he kills someone, he like buffs himself up like crazy. I can't remember. He like summons those things that like latch on to people and you have to kill them before it reaches them. Even that with 25-man most of the time, if you weren't like a pre-made group, was just a disaster. Now, obviously, if we were doing a Savage 24-man, we would be a pre-made group. I just remember the quality of players in Heroic was not the greatest. You usually had some dead weight in 25-man. It was Sarfang, yeah, that's the one. Heroic, just there's always some dead weight, and on top of that, nobody I know who ran a 25-man guild or ran a 40-man guild, even going all the way back, nobody liked it. Between organizing loot, between people having ego issues, but it was just drama after drama after drama, and it was just a disaster. Was it possible? Yes, but World of Warcraft also had a concurrent player base of like 11 million at the time. Doing it with like 500, 600,000, much different story nowadays, because you have a lot of people who generally aren't interested in doing a 24-man Savage, and you would basically have 1 or 2 raid groups probably per server, if that. Zalera can't even get Alexander Savage dead. You're telling me Zalera is going to be a part of this 24-man Savage content? Do you think they're going to be excited about it? Granted, in 3.5, we're actually getting the ability to make raid groups across server. 3.5 is what they're aiming for with this, where you can literally organize across server static with a chat room and everything. And then on top of that, like queue in as a group within the same data center. With that, a lot more feasible to do 24-man Savage, but still probably not probable, if that makes sense. Oh, and they also had a second question. So by the way, regarding main story quest, where are we heading? The Warrior of Darkness is kind of interesting, but I don't know how much we can get into that. Warrior of Darkness is going to be kind of like a subplot until 4.0, I imagine. And then in 4.0, when we're trying to most likely retake Alamigo, which is almost definitely the next step that we're going to have, I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to Alamigo, seeing what they're gonna do. Like where are they gonna go with that? Like how is that war with Garlemald going to play out? Because this is it. This is now an official war, us taking something back from Garlemald, and that's gonna be crazy. I'm looking forward to that. Mad Dog, welcome back for the 13th month, my man. Hey, yeah, I know. And even Mythic is still a goddamn disaster. Alright, next one. Hey, Haps, love your content and take a lore bonus. One question that I figure you, having been in the raiding scene for a while, may be able to answer. Basically, I started subbing in for a friend of mine's raid group. They are a mid-core raid group that runs for 3 hours on Friday and Saturday. Recently, a group of friends that I raided with in WoW in the past actually started playing, and I've continued playing 14 with the approached me and asked about starting a static and raiding at similar times earlier in the week, which is fine for me. Question is, while I did express to the leader of my current static that this may happen, how do I go about telling them ahead of time about me having to leave them while giving them a few weeks or so to find a replacement? You tell them to start looking for a replacement now. If your friends are serious about making a raid group, tell the friends raid group that you're filling in for, tell them to start looking. Don't wait and be like, yeah, it's happening now, and then just have to bail out. Tell them now to start looking for a replacement, but if you're going to do that, make sure that this other raid is actually happening, because you don't want to fall out of the spot, because it puts everyone in an awkward scenario, you know what I mean? So hopefully that answers your question adequately. All right, next question. Hiya, Hapsterino. Not a first-timer, but I have a bonus of 20 unidentified bones. Can I get those as seeds instead? Because that's all I really need for my ninja anima at this point while I finish my Monk 241. I want to build the best anima weapon for my summoner. Crit, det, spell speed. I'm 99% positive it's going to be crit, det, spell speed. No. Do not max out spell speed first. Spell speed is awful. Okay, let me say this. It's not as bad as it used to be, but compared to crit and determination, spell speed is awful. Crit over det over spell speed as a summoner. You're not a black mage. Black mages like spell speed. Summoners do not like spell speed. Do not go with spell speed. Spell speed, you will put 5 points of spell speed on there total. No more than 5 points of spell speed. 120 crit, 115 det, 5 spell speed, and you're done. Okay? Thank you for asking the question. Next one. Good evening, Mr. Happy. How goes the animal weapon grind? I think I have 55 points remaining, and I have like 3 or 4 Umbrites on me right now. So hoping for some +5 bonuses so we can get that out of the way. That's like 19 total Umbrites. Or like, it's close to like 18, because I'll definitely get a bonus again before I finish it. So I'm really close. I'm sub 20 Umbrites remaining. Let's see. Anyway, I have a lore story question. It's not really much of a spoiler. What happened with Minfilia? I thought we were supposed to rescue her, but I don't remember much of it. Did I miss something? No, we didn't rescue her. She's the word of the mother now. She joined her body with Hydaelyn so that they could reach the Warrior of Light and communicate with them. And even then, Hydaelyn can still barely do that, even with Minfilia's help. So they basically used the majority of their energy to do that once when we went into the Anti-Tower, and now we're just hoping that there's some way to, you know, restore Hydaelyn's power and essentially restore Minfilia's body. But yeah, that's where she is right now. That's what's going on. And yeah, we'll see what happens with her later. All right, and here's the final question over on the Dream Network forums. And then after that, we're going to do some of the Twitch questions from the live chat. Hey, coming back with a late fill-in question before the reset. So I have a level jump potion for your Solaire character. You son of a bitch, dude. I got to release that video. I recorded a giant opinion video about that jump potion. I'll probably release it alongside of this Monday with Mr. Happy video. That way people can hear my opinions on it. So lately I keep hearing about how horizontal progression will somehow revolutionize the game with unique buffs on different gear and new stats. It always seems that it's more of an illusion of choice. This man has been listening to my stream, because people tend to pick what's mathematically best. Would you feel any form of horizontal progression could actually work? If not, what types of changes would you like to see? Pretty much the only form of horizontal progression that will work in this game is making it so there are set bonuses from like Tombstone gear versus Savage gear. Like, oh, if you have a 2-piece Savage, add 10 potency to your Fire 1. If you have 4 pieces of your Savage set bonus, you'll increase your spell speed by 5%. And then on the lore pieces, you'd probably have something like a 2-piece bonus that increases, I don't know, that like does some sort of effect, makes doubles the, I don't know, makes thunder, adds 5% proc chance of Thundercloud. How about that? And then the 4 set bonus will like add 7 fucking seconds or just 9 seconds to Thunder's duration or something. Like things like that. Like, and that's barely even, that's like you said, it's basically not even real horizontal progression. It's what is mathematically the best choice out of those things. That is what people will go with. And that has always been the case. I mean, people like to say, oh, Final Fantasy XI had all this horizontal gear progression. Final Fantasy XI, you needed to put on a different piece of armor for literally every different spell you cast. You can't do that here. And I don't know about you, but that was not something I enjoyed doing. I didn't enjoy needing to change my weapon and my headpiece and my leg piece and my boots with a macro for every different spell as a black mage. And that's something that's never going to happen in this game. So ultimately, yes, any horizontal progression we get in Final Fantasy XIV will not be will basically still just come down to what is mathematically the best. Now, if one of them's mathematically the best single target versus mathematically the best AoE, versus maybe one of, like, let's use Black Mage as an example, makes Mana Ward block an additional 20% of the damage you take. Let's just say that that's one of them. Now, maybe that's really good for one of these fights in case you get targeted. Like, things like that. It's not real choice. It may come down to occasionally you making some sort of educated change, but it's just, it's never going to happen. It's never, horizontal progression is in no way going to revolutionize Final Fantasy XIV. I would like more interesting stats, like set bonuses. I'm for that. But I'm not going to sit here and say that's because I want horizontal progression. I'm going to sit here and say because it would be cool. Pretty much that is how I feel about it in a nutshell. So that is my opinion on that, and that is also the final question over on the Dream Network forum. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take maybe 2 questions from the Twitch live chat. I'll answer those. It usually takes me a while to find a good question because people just tend to ask me really strange or really common questions over on the Twitch chat, but then there's always the occasional really, really good one, and those are the ones that I pick out. So let's see what the Twitch chat has to say this week, shall we? Alright, so the first question I'm going to be taking from the Twitch live chat is a very, very simple one. Mr. Happy, when are you going to dye your hair? You said you'd do it once it grew back. I was just talking to Mel about that. I'm maybe a week and a half away from being happy with the length of my hair, so we can finally dye it for our 1,000 sub celebration. Keep in mind, even though we're at like 967 or something subs right now, because of the fall off, it was expected. It took me over a month to grow my hair back. Regardless, I still hit 1,000 subs, so I am still doing it. And the subs will be the one to get to vote on the color. Some ideas people have had: pink, purple, green, so that it matches Dwayne in the back there. So there's been a couple things. And no, I'm not dyeing the beard before anyone asks, but the hair, probably less than a month away from getting that dyed, because I'd be happy with the length of it in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So thank you for reminding everyone. I hadn't forgotten. I've just been waiting for my hair to be a long enough length for it to be reasonable. Alright, we'll take another pretty simple one from the Twitch live chat, because it's someone who hasn't really done the relic quests before. So, Mr. Happy, so having never done a relic weapon, the next 250 step, if that's where the next step takes us, it could take us to 260 for all we know, as opposed to the next step being 250. Will the stats we made in the 240 version carry over, or will they just redline our work? Usually after you do the stat customization, the customized stats follow you for the rest of the quest line. That is literally kind of the point of the 240 step, is it's the customization step, and those customized stats will stay with you until the conclusion of the Anima quest line, or until we get to a new weapon altogether. So no, yeah, you won't have to redo any of this, unless you decide you want to redo your stats manually at some point, but no, you'll get to keep those stats that you worked hard on for the I-240 weapon. Alright, we actually have quite a few good short questions, so I'm able to answer a few more of them from the Twitch chat. This one says, Mr. Happy, is Final Fantasy XIV the first game you hardcore rated in? Not just rated, hardcore rated. So, I guess it depends on how you define rating. Final Fantasy XI, no one called it rating, but doing a lot of that endgame content was Final Fantasy XI's equivalent of rating, you know what I mean? Dynamis, Limbus, you know, Einherjar, Kings, kind of like it's basically the 11 equivalent. I did that hardcore, so if you want to consider that, yes. On top of that, World of Warcraft, I did do server first progression for heroic 25-man and Cataclysm, and then I did a fair amount of heroic rating in Wrath of the Lich King. But even then, I think I didn't really do anything hardcore until Cataclysm. And even then, I think after like 2 weeks, I just got bored of World of Warcraft after 2 weeks of heroic rating. I was like, eh. I knew I wasn't going to last much longer in World of Warcraft. And, you know, Cataclysm had its own problems. So, and I didn't play MOP or any of that. So, I guess it depends on how you define rating. Because 11, yeah, I put a lot of hardcore progression hours into that game. Whenever a new patch came out, I was always one of the first people going and trying out the new content. I always loved doing that in 11. World of Warcraft was always the same. I always had those same aspirations. 14 was probably the first one that it kind of became right from the get-go, like as soon as 2.0 came out. Hell, even as soon as 1.0 came out, I did a lot of dark holds. I did a lot of Ifrit hard modes. I went in day one and got like, I don't know what progression place we had on Ifrit hard mode back in 1.18 or whatever patch he was put in. But yeah, I've always kind of tried to stay on the cutting edge if it's a game that I'm like really into, which is usually just 11 and World of Warcraft. Alright, and the final question we're going to be taking from over in the Twitch chat is, do you think Square Enix will ever change its formula? You seem to think that they won't. So let me put it this way. Square Enix will forever do dungeons, main story, raid, casual raid, and I mean like alternating between 8 and 24 mans most likely, side quests. Those are all always just going to be like, excuse me, a normal addition in a patch. The way they spoke about Deep Dungeon is they said, if Deep Dungeon does well, we'd like to make it a piece of content we regularly support. To me, that says we want to add it to the formula. It looks like they want to say, hey, this is successful. People like to say, I want to see something outside the formula. Whenever Square Enix does something outside the formula, it either hits or it misses. So they need to make sure they have that baseline formula that's a reliable thing. You can guarantee every 3 to 3.5 months, you're going to continue the story. There's going to be a new primal. There's going to be new boss fights from raids. There's going to be new dungeons. There's going to be new crafting gear, new gathering stuff, new nodes, new quality of life things. They want you to reliably know your money will get you that every 3 to 3.5 months, plus expansions in between. That is a good thing as a company, to be able to deliver on something consistent that has worked for your company forever. The thing is, some of us get bored of that after a while. The bottom line. It's going to happen. It's what happens in gaming. It's why companies push out games, yearly or biannually or something like, or along those lines. They're trying to keep up with how quickly people consume content and how quickly people are always looking for the next big thing. It's just what happens. So that's why they do things like Deep Dungeon. They want to find something else that works and add it to the formula, something people like. Aquapolis, I have a feeling we're going to see more treasure dungeons because it seems like it's a resounding success. It's been weeks since the Aquapolis came out, and it has been probably one of the most enjoyed pieces of content. That's not even hardcore. You literally go in there, you kill trash for what could be 15 minutes if you even make it to the 7th floor. That anticipation of the randomness, of the fun, of the disco lights, so much more successful than their other, you'll always go on, this room to the next room to the next. And you know what? They've even said that they want to add more dynamic parts to new dungeons. I think they saw how successful that Aquapolis was and how much people kind of enjoyed that sort of bit of chance, but it didn't really negatively affect them in any way outside of just their RNG. And they probably want to add things that are more dynamic like that to dungeons. That is what they said in the Gamer Escape interview. I think the formula will always stay the same, but they're always going to look for something that's just outside the formula, but they're looking for it so they can add it to the formula and support a piece of content that people genuinely enjoy and genuinely will subscribe or resubscribe to the game for. It's a safe road, and sometimes, yes, the safe road is not always the most exhilarating one, but I've enjoyed almost every patch up to this point. 3.1 being the only thing where it's questionable if I enjoyed that patch. Okay, I didn't enjoy Diadem or Lords of Verminion at all, but still, I played it kind of during that patch. So I am looking forward to seeing what they can pull out in the expansion in the coming patches, and with Deep Dungeon less than a month away. But on that note, everyone, I am going to wrap up this video. Thank you everyone for asking me questions live over on Twitch, and thank you for asking your questions over on the Dream Network forums. Be sure to ask questions for next week. One last time, we have the videos here on the side, so hopefully you click those, you like them, you enjoy them, you use them. Awesome. Thank you. I am going to do a separate sign off on Twitch than I do on YouTube. I have to explain that to the Twitch people live because everyone always goes, okay, happy bye. And I'm like, guys, I'm going to be on the Twitch stream for like 2 or 3 more minutes to say goodbye to you guys. So YouTube, this is your goodbye. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to ask those questions, and I'll see you next week. Until then, take care.